What is your reaction to Tesla buying Bitcoin? Was it more than you expected? Were you like, holy crap, like we both thought it was a good idea, but I didn't think they would do it this quickly? Like what was your reaction?
You know what? We talked about this and how logical it was, and then we started tweeting about it, and then obviously it caught Elon's attention, and he's a decisive executive, right? And so decisive is good. So I think the Tesla acquisition of 1.5 billion, it was a rational move on his part. I think what we saw next was Square just put out the announcement that they bought another 170 million. And the message of that is that they're not done, and this is going to be a continual thing. And then you saw MicroStrategy. We bought 10 million, and then we bought another 10 million, and then I kind of cracked open my piggy bank and I went and I found another billion, and so we bought another billion. And
yeah, I wanted to ask you, how much do you have right now? How much does MicroStrategy have in Bitcoin?
90,500. Let me get you the exact number. I think I have it written.
Love
90,532 Bitcoin. That's what we have right now.
Amazing. I actually just bought some Bitcoin today, right before this episode, heading into this. I feel like I got to full disclose because I was so excited about this. And it's funny because I feel like we're going to be quoting more and more stuff in Bitcoin, not even in dollars soon.
Well, I think the last 2 months have been really, really good. I think February 8th was an inflection point for legitimizing of Bitcoin as an institutional safe haven asset. I think that's the day that the Tesla 10K came out.
Yep.
You know, and since that came out, you've got Mellon announcing they're supporting it. There's news today that Morgan Stanley is going to get involved with Bitcoin and support an ETF. There is news today that JP Morgan suggested that people should allocate 1% to Bitcoin. We had the Canadian Bitcoin ETF that came out, and they raised $450 million in the first 2 days. Most successful ETF launch ever in Canada. You saw an announcement of NYDIG today with an open-ended Bitcoin mutual fund. Marathon is a Bitcoin miner, bought $150 million worth of Bitcoin back at 31,000, you know, so all these companies have been moving aggressively. Now they've got whatever, 250 million worth of Bitcoin. Hut 8 announced they're hodling Bitcoin. So I think you see an avalanche of publicly traded companies. I mean, there were none 12 months ago. And now it's one after the other.
Yeah. And to me, it felt like the Tesla moment was interesting in so many ways of like, they're not a fintech company. They don't have any banking things. They haven't talked about Bitcoin. And it is just like a small piece of their balance sheet. And they are one of the world's largest tech companies that seemingly didn't have a stake in this game, but now all of a sudden is playing it. So to me, that was interesting because now I'm like, okay, that opens the door a lot quicker for Apple, for Amazon, for Google. And I'm waiting to know, and I'm kind of curious your take on who's that next big shoe to drop, because I have to bet all those companies, if they weren't, we're probably talking about it, but now they're really talking about it because Tesla did it. And they know the next time Amazon announces they're buying, it's at 100K or 75K a Bitcoin. So the FOMO, I really think has got to start kicking in for this big tech.
Yeah, I think the buy has been de-risked. Now we're still in year one, right? Like year one of institutional adoption of Bitcoin started. You can either say it started in April or it started on August 10th when MicroStrategy dropped the $250 million buy. So, you know, somewhere between April and August. And we're still early. But what you can see is Square put out their announcement yesterday or 2 days ago, and they said they added 1 million new users or 1 million new Bitcoin buyers in January. Okay, and so, and they sold like 1.7 billion of Bitcoin in the fourth quarter. PayPal is paying attention. So now you want to play the game of Kingmaker. Here's the dynamic, right? Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon. especially you've got the Facebook, Apple, Google dynamic, right? I mean, Google Android is struggling with iOS. Facebook is sitting between the two of them. They've all got kind of a uncomfortable love-hate co-opetition relationship. If all three of those companies, those big three, because they're all big and mobile, right? Amazon's the fourth, but especially Facebook, Google, and Apple. Those three, if they do nothing, then Square and PayPal are going to consistently and gradually rip away their accounts. The reason that PayPal moved is Square forced them to move.
What's the next news like that? Is it a big company? Is it, I just kind of want to know your moonshot.
I think the next news that'll drop is you'll see some big investment, like famous investment names, like big macro investors or big investors in the market. And then someone will say, yeah, we bought $1 billion worth of it, or we bought a lot of it and we're buying a lot more. Okay. I don't know which one, but there's 10,000 big companies that could buy $1 billion of this. There's 10,000 big investors that could buy $1 billion of this. And there's 10,000 individuals floating out there that could buy $1 billion of this. And that's the universe. And right now, I announced I bought $1 billion. Elon Musk announced he bought $1 billion. You know, we've had a couple of announcements of 750 million. So, you know, you got 30,000 different players, and there's not a lot of room in this thing. So at some point, you're going to see 1, 2, 3 more of them. They're going to come out with serious news like that because it's possible and it's logical.
I think it's got to be Apple. That's what I want to happen. Is like last time we talked about the Apple buying as much as possible, becoming like the Fed of Bitcoin. I'm still like, Apple, stop building an electric car to try and compete with Tesla. Just literally buy 100 billion of Bitcoin as fast as you can, and you'll make $1 trillion in 5 years, and that'll add the $1 trillion to your market cap instead of fiddling around with competing head on with Elon Musk. Like if I actually, you know what I mean? Like, and it's almost going to be fiduciarily like irresponsible for them not to have done it when they just hold their fiat. But anyway, that's like kind of, I just keep feeling like, you know, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy once you do it. And that's why Elon said in retrospect, it was inevitable. It's like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Bitcoin's up 30%, never going like, you know, since just because of Tesla. So
it is sitting right there. Apple could raise $100 billion in debt at 1 or 2% interest. They could
compound it 200%
money.
Yeah.
And again, the leverage comes from the cheap debt markets, the corporate debt markets, convert and secure debt market. That's the leverage. The fulcrum, the place to stand, is Bitcoin. And so we're waiting to see which company is going to be the Archimedes, and they're going to use that leverage against that fulcrum to move the world. The real issue right now, or at least a subtle issue, is the accounting treatment. If you buy the underlying Bitcoin as an intangible asset, and I think conservative CFOs, they're kind of it creates a little bit of pause for them to buy billions and billions of dollars of an intangible asset, because they'll have to do non-GAAP accounting on a balance sheet item and explain it to their shareholders. And so if they don't do that, then they have to go and they have to buy it as a fund, and then they have to get comfortable that if they held it in a fund model, that they would get GAAP accounting. And so I really think right now, working through the way they communicate it to their shareholder base and the way they account for it is what causes people to pause before they aggressively pursue this strategy.